Before Carpenter's paranoia, before the blood test, before trust dissolved in Antarctica, there was another thing, a 1951 invasion that arrived in black and white, buried under ice, and Cold War dread. The cast nearly froze to death for realism. The monster was literally set on fire between takes. These are 20 bizarre hidden facts about The Thing from Another World, the film that taught Hollywood how to freeze fear solid. Number 1, when the cast stepped onto the soundstage, they weren't acting cold, they were surviving it. The entire set was built inside a refrigerated warehouse, temperatures deliberately kept below freezing to capture one effect no studio trick could fake: visible breath. Every exhale fogged naturally, every shiver was genuine. Actors wore their heavy coats between takes, not for costume continuity, but because hypothermia was a legitimate risk. When you watch those scenes and see the tension in their faces, part of it is performance, the rest is just people trying not to freeze. The frostbite wasn't makeup, it was an occupational hazard. Hollywood had decided realism mattered more than comfort, and the cast paid the price in numb fingers and aching joints. That commitment to authenticity gave the film a texture no amount of post-production could replicate. Number 2, the alien terrorizing the Arctic outpost wasn't designed as a creature at all. It was a plant. Writers deliberately described it as an intelligent vegetable, a sentient organism evolved beyond anything Earth had ever grown. The thing didn't hunt humans for food. It drained their blood like fertilizer, using them as fuel for reproduction. The costume reflected that bizarre origin. Instead of scales or fur, the suit featured rigid fibrous textures meant to evoke cellulose and bark. The Thing actor James Arness moved stiffly inside it, not from poor design, but because the character itself was meant to feel rooted, deliberate, unstoppable. The idea of a vegetable invader sounds absurd until you watch it unfold. Some critics at the time found the concept laughable, but audiences responded to the eerie wrongness of a thinking hunting plant. Number 3, producer Howard Hawks understood something fundamental about fear. The less you see, the more you imagine. So he insisted that the thing remain mostly obscured, lurking in shadows and silhouettes instead of standing front and center under stage lights. James Arness appeared in full view only a handful of times. The rest of his performance existed in peripheral glimpses, half-lit doorways, and the suggestion of movement just beyond the frame. It wasn't a budget limitation, it was calculated psychology. Hawks believed that showing too much would kill the mystery, transforming terror into spectacle. By keeping the creature hidden, he forced audiences to project their own worst fears onto that hulking shape in the darkness. The imagination filled in details more horrifying than any makeup artist could design. That restraint became the film's signature, proving that sometimes the scariest monster is the one you never fully see. Number 4, James Arness didn't just play the thing, he risked his life inside it. The costume was coated in flammable chemicals chosen specifically because they photographed well under harsh lighting. Nobody considered what would happen when those chemicals got near open flame until they filmed the lab explosion scene. As fire erupted across the set, the suit ignited. Arness stood there burning while crew members rushed in with extinguishers, dousing him between takes to prevent serious injury. The heat was so intense that even after they put him out, the smell of scorched fabric lingered for hours. Arness walked away with minor burns and a story nobody believed until decades later when production still surfaced showing the suit actually on fire. That dedication, bordering on recklessness, gave the film a raw intensity you can feel in every frame. Number 5, the alien spaceship buried beneath the ice wasn't a miniature model or matte painting. It was literal garbage. The production team scavenged aircraft parts and scrap metal from studio storage, arranging them in a circle under artificial snow to create the illusion of a crashed vessel. Hidden lamps lit it from below, casting an eerie glow that made discarded junk look like extraterrestrial technology. The effect worked because nobody expected such a low-budget solution to photograph so convincingly. What looked impossibly advanced on screen was just creative problem-solving and good lighting. Hollywood has always been about illusion, but rarely has trash looked so otherworldly. The crew turned limitations into legend, proving that innovation doesn't require money, just imagination and a willingness to repurpose what everyone else threw away. Number 6, the US Air Force didn't just cooperate with production, they controlled it. Military officials reviewed the script before approving any involvement, insisting that soldiers be portrayed as competent heroes rather than trigger-happy obstacles. That demand created tension behind the scenes. The story naturally pitted scientists against military personnel, civilians advocating study while soldiers wanted destruction. Hawks navigated those politics carefully, keeping the core conflict intact while softening the military's rougher edges just enough to satisfy Pentagon reviewers. What audiences saw as balanced debate was actually a negotiated compromise. The film became a subtle act of rebellion, questioning authority while pretending to respect it. That subtext gave the story unexpected depth, turning a simple monster movie into a meditation on who gets to decide humanity's response when the impossible arrives. Decades later, that same debate still resonates. Number 7. When James Arness signed on to play The Thing, he thought he was making a career-ending mistake. The costume embarrassed him. The character had no dialogue, no depth, just physical presence and menace. He worried audiences would remember him only as a monster, destroying any chance at serious dramatic roles. Arness reportedly skipped the premiere, too ashamed to watch himself lumber across the screen in rubber and chemicals. Critics barely mentioned his performance, focusing instead on the ensemble cast and Hawks' direction. But over time, something unexpected happened. Fans started calling him The Thing like it was a badge of honor, approaching him at conventions to praise his physicality and screen presence. By the end of his career, Arness had starred in Gunsmoke for 2 decades and become a television legend. Number 8. When the script called for the thing to burn, the crew didn't use trick photography or careful compositing. They actually set the creature on fire, and then they set the set on fire. The flames roared so high and spread so fast that several actors standing nearby had their eyebrows singed off. The heat warped camera lenses. The smoke lingered for days. Modern productions would never take that risk, relying instead on digital effects and controlled pyrotechnics. That authenticity translated directly to screen. The panic in the actors' eyes wasn't performance. It was genuine fear captured in real time. The scene still holds up because nothing about it was faked. You can see real flames consuming real materials in front of real people who didn't know if they'd make it through the take unburned. Number 9. One of the film's most unforgettable images, the moment scientists test alien cells in a petri dish, watching them pulse and multiply with horrifying speed, wasn't in the original script. Howard Hawks saw a lab experiment happening on set during a break and immediately recognized its potential. He ordered the cameras set up, rewrote the scene on the spot, and filmed it the same day. That spontaneous decision became iconic. The image of alien life spreading across glass, unstoppable and incomprehensible, crystallized the entire film's theme in seconds. Sometimes the best ideas arrive unplanned, born from observation rather than preparation. Hawks trusted his instincts, and that trust paid off. The blood experiment became shorthand for invasion itself, a visual metaphor that influenced science fiction for decades, all because someone noticed something interesting and decided to point a camera at it. Number 10. Director Christian Nyby received directorial credit, but crew members told a different story. They claimed Howard Hawks, officially listed as producer, couldn't resist taking control. Witnesses saw Hawks blocking scenes, yelling orders, and making creative decisions while Nyby stood quietly nearby, observing but not commanding. Some speculated Hawks gave Nyby the credit as a favor, helping launch his career while maintaining plausible deniability. Others believed Hawks simply couldn't step back, his instincts too strong to let someone else shape the footage. Either way, the film bears Hawks' signature. The overlapping dialogue, the understated tension, the refusal to explain everything, those were Hawks' trademarks from decades of westerns and screwball comedies. So technically, the scariest alien movie of the 50s might have been secretly directed by the man who made Bringing Up Baby. Hollywood has always been good at keeping secrets. This might be one of its best. Number 11. Many of the same technicians and sound engineers who worked on The Thing from Another World also contributed to The Day the Earth Stood Still, released the same year. They shared equipment, reused sound effects, and even borrowed each other's innovations. That haunting electronic hum threading through both films? It came from the same sound lab. The 1950s science fiction boom was a surprisingly small world. Studios competed for audiences, but shared resources behind the scenes, creating an interconnected web of talent that defined the era's aesthetic. Watching these films back to back reveals subtle similarities in tone and technique, echoes of collaboration hidden in plain sight. Two visions of alien contact, one peaceful and one violent, built using the same tools by the same hands. That shared DNA makes them companion pieces, twin reflections of Cold War anxiety dressed up as entertainment. Number 12. Originally, studio executives wanted The Thing to look like a tall human in silver makeup. No claws, no monstrous features, just an imposing figure that could pass for human at first glance. Howard Hawks rejected the idea outright. He demanded something inhuman, a creature that looked stitched together and unnatural. So the design team rebuilt the suit, adding bulk and height, making Arness look less like an actor and more like a Frankenstein soldier risen from the ice. The costume's rigidity wasn't a flaw, it was intentional, emphasizing the aliens' otherness. Hawks understood that horror requires distance, a visual gap between us and them that can't be bridged. The final design achieved exactly that, creating something recognizably humanoid but fundamentally wrong. If Hawks hadn't stepped in, audiences might have gotten the guy from another world, a forgettable monster lost to history. Number 13. An early concept featured a radically different design, an insect-like creature with multiple arms and glowing eyes. The special effects team built the suit, tested it under lights, and even shot preliminary footage. Then someone decided it looked too grotesque, too far removed from anything audiences could relate to. The design was scrapped, the footage was filed away and forgotten. Officially, it's lost, but rumors persist that the test reels still exist somewhere in studio vaults, waiting for someone to dig them out. That abandoned version represents a road not taken, a glimpse of how strange the thing could have become if Hawks had pushed further into pure alien horror. Instead, they pulled back, choosing suggestion over spectacle. Maybe that lost footage would have elevated the film, or maybe it would have collapsed under its own ambition. We'll never know unless those reels surface. Number 14. The film's final line, "Keep watching the skies," wasn't just dramatic flair. It landed like a government warning during the height of Cold War paranoia. Radio stations replayed the quote out of context, making it sound like breaking news. Some listeners genuinely believed authorities were issuing alerts about potential invasions. Science fiction had never felt so prophetic, so immediate. The line blurred the boundary between entertainment and reality, transforming a movie tagline into cultural shorthand for vigilance. For weeks after release, people looked up more often, scanning clouds for something impossible. That's the power of perfectly timed storytelling. One sentence became a mantra, echoing through decades of alien invasion narratives that followed. It wasn't just cinema, it was psychological preparation for a world that felt increasingly unpredictable. Number 15. Composer Dmitri Tiomkin recorded the score in a studio kept deliberately cold. Temperatures so low the orchestra had to wear gloves between takes. The freezing conditions caused instruments to slightly detune, creating an eerie, warped quality the producers initially considered a mistake. Then they listened closer. That strange tension in the music, the way notes felt slightly off-center, mirrored the film's atmosphere perfectly. They kept it. So when you hear the score's unsettling tones, you're literally hearing the cold. The environment shaped the sound, turning technical error into artistic choice. String instruments especially suffered, their tuning drifting sharp or flat in ways that created accidental dissonance. Brass players complained their mouthpieces felt like ice against their lips. Chomkin's willingness to embrace imperfection gave the film a sonic identity that matched its visual coldness. Number 16. Actress Ridley Scott cited The Thing from Another World as a direct influence on the film. Alien. Its claustrophobic tension, the isolated setting, the blue-collar workers stuck in a nightmare, the slow-building dread, all borrowed from Hawks' film. Even Alien's ensemble dynamic, where every character matters and anyone might die, echoed the 1951 blueprint. Without The Thing, there might never have been Alien, or at least not in the form we know. Scott understood that true terror comes from confinement and uncertainty, lessons The Thing taught perfectly. Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien's screenplay, kept a copy of The Thing in his personal collection and screened it repeatedly during development. The genetic line from Arctic outpost to space freighter runs direct and undeniable. Decades later, filmmakers are still mining the same vein, proving that great ideas don't age. Number 17. James Arness stood 6'7", already imposing, but the camera crew wanted him to look even taller, more inhuman. They shot from low angles, making him loom over every frame. They built shorter doorways so he'd have to duck, exaggerating his size. The tricks worked. On screen, Arness looked less like a man and more like a force of nature, something too large to fight. Cinematographer Russell Harlan positioned the camera below waist level for most of Arness's scenes, a technique borrowed from film noir but repurposed for horror. They even placed him on subtle risers in wide shots, adding inches the audience never consciously noticed. The set designers lowered ceiling heights and corridors The Thing walked through, making every space feel compressed and threatened by his presence. That visual manipulation turned physicality into menace, proving that perception matters more than reality. Number 18. Reviews range from violent cartoon to masterpiece of mounting dread. Some critics dismissed it as sensationalist trash, others praised its intelligence and restraint, but audiences kept coming back. The US military reportedly screened it for troops overseas, using alien invasion as morale-building entertainment. Apparently, monsters made soldiers feel safer about earthly threats. The film's ability to divide critics while uniting audiences proved its cultural relevance. Box office numbers told the real story, with the film outperforming studio expectations receptions in every major market. European critics were especially divided, with French reviewers praising its existential themes, while British critics found it too American and violent. The controversy only fueled ticket sales, turning disagreement into marketing. It wasn't trying to please everyone, it was trying to provoke, disturb, and linger. Number 19. The overlapping dialogue style came straight from Hawks' earlier comedies like His Girl Friday. He believed people talk over each other when scared, not in perfect sentences. That technique made the panic feel real, organic, messy. The audience felt it. The chaos on screen matched the chaos in their own minds. Hawks directed actors to interrupt each other mid-sentence, creating a rhythm that felt like genuine conversation under pressure rather than scripted exchange. Sound engineers initially complained the overlaps would muddy the audio, but Hawks insisted the realism mattered more than clarity. He was right. Test audiences reported feeling more immersed in the story precisely because the dialogue felt unpredictable and natural. The technique became a Hawks signature, later studied in film schools as an example of how breaking rules can strengthen emotional truth. Hawks understood that realism doesn't mean clarity. Number 20. 3 decades later, director John Carpenter remade the story as The Thing, transforming the Cold War thriller into a body horror masterpiece. Carpenter used snippets of the original score and recreated the "Burn It" line as tribute. What started as black and white alien mystery became blood-soaked paranoia, proving that fear never really dies. It just evolves, adapts, and finds new forms. The 1951 film planted seeds that grew into one of horror's greatest achievements. Both versions asked the same question: what do we do when trust becomes impossible? Carpenter acknowledged Hawks' influence in every interview, calling the original the perfect blueprint for ensemble terror. The Thing proved that some stories are timeless because they tap into primal fears that don't fade with changing technology or culture. The Thing from Another World wasn't just a monster movie. It was the birth of a genre that questioned what humanity fears most: the unknown wrapped in familiar shapes. It taught Hollywood how to build tension without answers, how to make cold feel claustrophobic, and how to let audiences finish the nightmare in their own minds. From frozen sound stages to secret directors, from vegetable invaders to real fire, every element came from obsession and risk. The film paved the way for Alien, for Carpenter's masterpiece, for every isolation thriller that followed. 4 decades before CGI, before digital effects, before comfort mattered more than craft, there was just ice, imagination, and one impossible question: what if it's already inside?